Welcome back to Season 6 of the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth in successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falash, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again this week. Today we're going to be talking about a recent survey that Polaris sent out and the really interesting data that you all helped us gather around the future sale of your organization. So stick with me here because I think that you're going to find this feedback really useful regardless of the stage of your career or your organization. In our survey, we specifically asked questions around things like timing, readiness, even the stage of your career, age-wise, and your confidence and factors that come into play and influence your decision for that next step. And what we learned with some of these questions actually surprised us a little bit. So we're excited to share this info with you. Now, we all know that many of you get these unsolicited calls and mass emails saying, sell now, right? It's always the right time. And we get them from dozens and dozens of brokers out there. But we also know that most docs prefer working with an advisor who will first dig into their organization and do it with you and optimize it on all fronts, like operations, clinical, financial, and not rush you into a sale if it's not what you're ready for. So you get a much better and a solid valuation when you choose to sell. And we also know that you don't want to go without proper representation from advisors, lawyers, accountants, because foregoing those in theory, to save a few bucks usually ends up costing you a lot more in the end. So first, thank you for helping us gather this information because your peers listening today do need your insights. We all want to know and learn from each other's experiences, right? And second, for those that didn't take part in the survey, get ready because today's discussion might just bring you the clarity that you're looking for. And at the helm of the survey, and to help us walk through the survey results today, is my teammate and Polaris Business Development Executive, Nan Meehan. Nan, good to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Jamie. This will be a good one for our peers and everybody to listen and learn for sure.
Absolutely, because it's kind of hard to know sometimes, what are my colleagues really doing? What are they thinking? What's their plan? And am I doing it right? Not that there's ever a right or wrong way or plan, but it is always nice to know, where other people in the industry are and where their heads are at, right?
I love surveys and I love the feedback that we got from this one. So it'll be great to be able to share that.
Agree. So why don't you tee it up for our listeners and tell us why the heck we did this in the first place? What was
absolutely. Well, for all of our listeners, it's a practice ownership and transition survey. So really basically what that means is we talk to our practice owners and ask them questions. In any good survey, I say the expected result is usually what happens. And in this case, that clearly gave us the exact feedback that we need to share today. And some sound bites, some additional things that I think you're going to enjoy hearing because you might be in that position to say, am I ready or not? And what are the things I should be thinking about? So that's what this survey did. And it was quite eye-opening, I would say, in terms of those that participated. So thank you to those. And we'll hope to do more of these in the future.
100%. Okay, so you started with things like just some real basic foundation questions, like what type of dental practice do you currently own? I'm actually looking through the questions here in front of me. How many years have you owned your current practice? Primary location, state, all of those types of things. We really want to know where you're coming from and including your age range. So tell us a little bit first about that group of questions and sort of some of the foundational feedback that you got.
Yeah. So I call it like the geography as well as the demographics. So we knew that a majority of our participants would be in a certain age range, and that came through in the survey. Those that are between 45 and 65 plus are thinking about what's next if they've been in practice for a period of time. We also found out that the suburban market is a hot market. Generally, this is where you have your specialists, your docs, all of the dentists that really feature a great practice and a growing practice. So the results there did reflect that we had a suburban area audience, regardless of where. We also found out that the years in practice was a big one, and how many years had they been in practice? A majority of them did come through on the survey, and were in the 20 to 25-year range, which means they've had great experience and now they're thinking about what's next.
Mhm.
So all of those geo demographics were clear in terms of what we were looking for in this survey. So it is the premier market for those that are interested in selling.
And it really helps us, we have a really good audience for our podcast here. It's not necessarily the same group of people all the time that we're talking to, but we know that our listeners are very engaged with us. So it was good to get their feedback. And it also helps us with topics and things that we discuss here because we want to know where your heads are at in terms of where you sit with your business, where you are with your strategic plan. And that kind of brings me to the next part of the survey. And it's about feeling prepared. So let's talk about how prepared these respondents feel to sell their practice if they were to do it today.
Yeah, so this one was an interesting one.
Mm.
The percent that came through that were prepared was extremely low. Only 14% roughly feel that they're prepared to sell. And this was interesting because, in many cases you think you're ready, but when you start looking at the survey and you start thinking about true sale, am I really ready? So a low percentage in this case that they felt like they weren't prepared. And that's where education, that's where advisory and support come in terms of getting you prepared. So that was a low one, Jamie. That was one of the ones I was a little surprised. I thought a higher percentage would be prepared to sell.
Yeah, that number kind of surprised me too, in that it changes the level of confidence. But that tells me that there are plenty of people that, although not ready to sell today, they're aware. They're aware that they need support, right?
Exactly, exactly. And what are the resources that they need? So one of the things that came out of this was, I need tax planning. I need financial review. I need to make sure my KPIs are in place. All of that. So I think there's a fear that you have to be over prepared. And that was really what I came back to with this, that you don't really need to be over prepared. We can help you with that. But feeling like those are the things like tax, as well as financial, as well as some of the legal guidance. And you've had people on the podcast, Jamie, in all of those areas that can help our listeners, understand that. And this is where a good advisor comes in to help on all of those resources to improve that practice valuation.
Exactly. And as you are preparing, because everyone needs to prepare at some point for their exit, right? No matter if that's early or later or when you plan it to be, but you need to have certain experts in place, like a great accountant, a great attorney. You want the right manufacturers of, equipment to make sure that your practice is optimized in every way possible and every way that brings value before you're really going to feel prepared to sell your practice when that's right for you.
Yeah. I use this survey as this is a spark. I call it spark the planning. So it really gave me the opportunity and the rest of our team to really think about how do we spark our potential sellers to think about this. And so that way I know those that haven't done anything or haven't prepared are where we can help and help them grow and be ready for that.
Yeah. And again, it was a little reassuring that people are aware that they're not prepared and they know there's work to do. And you can reach out to us. You need advisors. But we also have just endless amounts of podcasts that introduce you all to resources, right? Like these
Yeah.
experts that you need in your practice. You can always
Yeah.
go through our old episodes or give us a buzz and we can support you. Now, your next question in the survey was, have you taken any of the following steps toward preparing for a sale? Can you go through what some of those steps were? I know there was everything from obtaining evaluation to succession planning. And, where was your mindset around asking for some of these things?
Yeah, I think when you think about that preparation, it's like, have they thought about scaling to grow? Have they thought about their infrastructure? Is their infrastructure fragile? Do they need to look at operational support to help them get there? And those are the kind of things that came out of the survey. And really, honestly, the other thing that came out, I think, was what will influence you to sell. So not only the the part about that, but what truly will influence you to sell. And I think this is something we should spend a little time on because this is what's in everybody's mind when they think about selling. So,
Oh, let's
yeah,
then let's
sure.
talk about what would
Right.
influence people to sell. I'm curious now because I didn't get all of the inside data on this.
Yeah. So the number one thing, and when you think about that question, go back to why do you want to sell? So if you're in the why stage, there's burnout. Many of our clinicians work crazy hours and have just done it for years and years. So burnout was a big reason, I would say, for thinking about that sale process. The other thing is, we talked about readiness. And so financial readiness is one piece of it, but emotional readiness. Think
Oh, okay.
about that. This is a emotional decision, and many people don't want to, address it. But I think we often think to ourselves, what am I going to do next in my life? And what is next in my life? We don't slow down enough to think about that. And so, when you slow down a bit and you start thinking about what's next, and you realize you've got some burnout, that you've got some clinical expertise, but you've been doing it for far too long, there are other options in life. And so that's really what I think was an interesting part of the survey as well.
Well, yeah, the emotional readiness part, in fact, that brings to mind, I was listening to just a little snippet of a podcast when I was scrolling through Instagram the other night. And it was the person asked themselves, they said, who am I without this in my life? So I
Hmm.
think you really have to, in that decision to sell, be emotionally prepared to make that exit. And for a lot of people, that's a longer transition. It's not like you're done one day, but that does happen as well, of course. So I
Yeah.
think you have to really be ready in your heart of hearts to turn over what you've built.
And what's next? I think that's the question. Number one, you can admit that you've got burnout, but
Yeah.
you say, what else am I going to do?
Right.
And
Who
there
am
are
I?
exactly. There are so many options that come out of this, post that thought process. So clearly, important, very important to think about that.
In some of the data that came back on have you taken any of these steps? I know that some of the higher percentages were improved operations, updated their financials, but one of them was they've obtained a valuation, which tells me people are curious about what their practice is worth, now in while they're optimizing. But how did that valuation influence them to sell?
Yeah. Yeah. I think many people don't understand. Many of our founders, let's say, they haven't taken the time to really understand what is evaluation and what do I need to know in my practice to get the appropriate valuation. So there's two things that you really need to know. I would say your top line, your production, what's that number, your annualized sales, and what's your EBITDA, your bottom line.
Mhm.
So valuations are formalized based on those two numbers. However, there's a lot in between in terms of getting, a better valuation. When you think about it, real estate ownership or tax implication or number of partners in the practice, all of those things play in. But understanding those two numbers is really a great way to start thinking about your valuation. And as we've mentioned, DeWalker's talked about it on many of his podcasts. 2026 is a very good year in the capital markets, and valuations are strong right now. and getting prepared. And I would say preparation is, 6 to 12 months when you start thinking about that sale process. So I would say, those are the two numbers you need. You need to have a conversation with an advisor with your top line number and your EBITDA. And many people don't know their EBITDA. So your accountants, your team, your financial review can get you to that number, and we can help you get there as well. But clearly, those are important things to know, and then we'll build the valuation from there. To understand what that multiple, that's EBITDA times the multiple that our buyers, that we have hundreds of them, are willing to review your business and pay based on that valuation.
Yeah, and I know that you and DeWalker do this often. They help people understand what that readiness means.
Hmm.
Like, you don't just call someone and the next day you're going to market. That's not how that works. When you need to step back and look at the organization as a whole. Maybe you've got a couple locations that are just blowing it out of the water, and then you have a couple that are a little sluggish. We can help you balance that out, bring those slower practices up to meet the higher expectations of the organization, which is what we want, because that
Yeah.
always comes back to your valuation and a higher dollar amount when you're trying to exit, obviously.
Yeah, that consult the sale process is an important one as well. In the readiness review, many times we'll say, you may not have the numbers right now to get the best valuation. So what do I do in the meantime? So, obviously the consult the sale portion of that you just referred to is really important in getting that preparation completed and moving forward so that you can value your business appropriately and get the best outcome.
Yeah, and we can set you on a definite timeline as to, a realistic expectation of where that will land you and how long, of course.
Yep. Yep.
So, what about the process of selling? I just did a podcast with your dental lawyer, Rob Montgomery, and that comes out. Don't hold me to it. I can't remember the date. Cut that
I,
out.
I saw the preview and I would say watch it. It's very good.
Okay.
So
All right. Yeah. YouTube,
yeah.
you can listen to it. Don't hold me to the date. I'm losing it.
Yep.
But we were talking a little bit about the process of selling a dental practice without getting too far into the weeds, right? More of
Sure.
the high level overview and what those stages are and what to expect and what not to get tripped up on, more importantly. So let's talk about the confidence of docs of understanding that selling process. What did you learn there?
Yeah. So what I learned is many people are not confident, that they don't really understand the process. And that came through in the survey, kind of help me understand what I need to know. And I experience that every day in having, founder conversations, because we want them to understand the steps. So if I think about our steps, and this is, a process that's consistent with the expertise of Polaris here, but our process is geared in an engagement. So first, understanding, listening and learning from you as a founder about your business and where you're directionally thinking. Preparation, again, as we said, I'm getting prepared, I'm thinking about it. We'll help you along the way. And then I would say there's the financial review. And this is something, we've got our DNA team, amazing people that do the data and analytics. That's what that stands for, behind the scenes, to get your numbers in the appropriate manner that they need to be in.
Hmm.
You'll also hear, once you engage with us and we get to the financials, you'll also hear us building the deck. So the SIM, that's your confidential information memo about your business. And this is extremely thorough when we're talking to buyers. This is not just a one pager. This is the depth of your business and getting prepared so that when we take it to multiple buyers, they see the value in what we bring to market. On top of that, the next step is going to be questions from the buyers. So you will be interviewed from potential buyers, and we will help prepare you for that process. It's a very important process because you want to be able to put your best foot forward, as you do in everything in life. But that preparation from an advisor is really critical because you've not been through it before. This is a new process for any founder that's selling their practice. So having that time to go through that. So that process is robust and meaningful. And I think when you listen to the podcast, you'll hear the legal things you need. At the end, there's legal agreements that happen, and you get to an LOI where a buyer is interested, and we narrow it down with you and for you, knowing, the best results for the practice. So it's a 6-month process in many cases. Some can be less, and some can be more depending on how complex the transaction is. But have confidence that we will guide you to through the process and understand, what's needed as you move forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because the legal side of it, working with great lawyers on your deal, they do so much behind the scenes. Some people think it's a documentation role, and it is not. They,
Mhm.
yes, they manage all of those things, of course, but they play an integral part of all of these transactions, and it needs to be somebody that you work well with, that you trust, and they'll have your best interest in mind. So, critical role. We do work with some great attorneys,
Mm.
but you also mention another side, the soft skills
Mhm.
of yours
Mhm.
because you are
Mhm.
involved. First of all, I love the Sims that we create because really that's your pitch deck, right? It
Right.
is all the things about your business without going overboard. We don't want to give away everything yet. Like it's the movie trailer. Put it that
Mhm.
right. It's the
Mhm.
peek into your business that entices buyers that want what you want to come and take a look.
Mhm.
And that's important to point out is that this is not for every buyer in the market. We don't want to expose you to everybody out there that's raising their hand. These need to be in line with what you want for the next steps of either stepping away or your career or whatever those next steps might be. So I
Yeah.
think that's an important thing to point out. But the soft skills of being prepared for buyer questions. And again, that's not everybody that's interested. These are ones that are selected according
Mhm.
to what you're looking for. But being prepared to speak to them about your business according to, the questions that they'll have ready for you. We know those questions. You all
Mhm.
have lived that, so you're very well prepared to walk sellers through exactly what to expect from those phone calls.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, we give you the confidence
Yeah.
that you're ready. We
Yeah.
give you that confidence. We've done the work, we've done the pre-work, and that confidence says you're now ready. You're ready to sit down with buyers and brag about your business. You've
Yeah.
lived it, you've worked hard, it's your legacy. And that brag opportunity in the right way is
Mhm.
an important part of the process.
100%. And you need to know, what you're going to be asked and be prepared for it so that you have complete answers to questions and complete explanations because the buyer's going to dig into things that you might not expect.
Sure.
Full picture. And we
Yeah.
want to give them as much information as we possibly can. With that, I want to ask you one other question that was on the survey that people responded to because they got to select up to 3.
Mhm.
So, what will most influence your decision to begin the sale process? What did you learn from that?
I think exactly what we've said so far, that that influence is the confidence, the ability to move forward. And, I would say understanding the financials, that's an important part to get them ready to be able to move forward. And I think as we've talked about, it's their personal readiness. It's their personal, ability to say, raise your hand. I think it's time. I think my timing is I've done this for a long time. I may have burnout. I may want to try something new. And this is the time. And I would say many people wait too long. So, this is what
Oh.
I learned on this survey that many people have delayed this because they're unclear and unsure. So, that delay is not helpful in the long term process. So, I would say step up to as early as you can because you're never gonna be completely prepared, and
Oh,
we will help you get there for sure.
for many people, and this applies to a lot of things in life, you're waiting for that cue, you're waiting for the right moment. Well, the right moment was often yesterday when you also
Mhm.
weren't ready, but you need to start the process and talk to somebody, regardless of optimizing your business or adding partners or going to sale. You have to take this first step and make the time because
Yeah.
it's important. Is ask yourself, is your valuation important to you? And if it is, you have to be able to just pick up the phone, allocate an hour on Tuesday evening or whenever that might be in your schedule when you don't have patients to just get some questions answered. That way, you're
Yeah.
going to feel more confident and a lot more prepared, regardless of what your next step is.
Yeah, I say make it a priority. Honestly, there's no harm, no foul. There's no commitment,
Right.
there's a learning. And when you make it a priority, you start thinking about it differently and you start imagining, again, like we said in the beginning of this conversation, what's my next journey? What does it look like in the future? And unless you take that priority step and make it a priority, you're not really going to be thinking that way. That was probably the key learning for all of us is that those that haven't taken the time probably should, and those that haven't made it a priority can start now. So I would say that's a key takeaway.
We're all guilty of procrastinating about something or other in our lives, but this is not the time to procrastinate.
And timing wise, one more thing, Jamie, timing wise, we're in Q2. Let's just imagine it's a 6-month process. You want this done by the end of 2026. You already have just completed your taxes. So you have a lot of your accounting information in line anyway.
Yeah,
So
good point.
this timing is really appropriate for those that feel like financially maybe they're not ready. You are. You have your numbers. We can get them with you and for you from your accounting team. So it's really appropriate time to really start thinking about making the time and making this a priority.
100%. And we can give you the resources to do that. So, Nan,
Mm.
thanks so much for coming on today. This was really enlightening. It's good to hear how our peers are thinking and get
Mhm.
their feedback. So, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, if you didn't get to participate in the survey, now you have some insight as to what
That's
your
right.
peers are doing, thinking. And a lot of you are in the same boat. We know that. And I think that camaraderie in that space can kind of give some people that little nudge forward to pick up the phone and start thinking about getting prepared for what they feel is their next step.
I love it. I love it. I wish everybody good luck in thinking about that and making it a priority. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you. And to all of you, we love your questions that you send us, so keep them coming, and we'll keep delivering the content that you ask for. As always, if you want to learn about any of our Polaris expert advisory services, or maybe there's a topic that we haven't covered that you'd like to hear about, you can send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com, and be sure to visit our website at polarishealthcarepartners.com, where you'll find weekly articles to grow and support your healthcare business, along with access to all podcast episodes, events, and a whole lot more. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a colleague and be sure to leave us a rating on any of your favorite podcast platforms. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast.